Species.
One day my wife's going to have an old mom haircut, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Welcome to Origin of Species. My name is Scott. I'm here alongside my friend Steve. And could you expound on what you just said?
Well, it happens to all ladies. There comes a point when you're older that 9 out of 10 times that your hair gets short.
Yeah.
It kind of gets a little bit frozen into place. But there's just a short hair. There's an older mom haircut.
Yeah.
That my mom has. I think your mom has. I think most people's mothers have at some point.
It's a variation on the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a there are exceptions to every rule, but for the most part.
Yeah.
And
it happens. And I just don't know we're not at that age yet. And I don't mean it in a bad way of people that have that. And again.
Well, you did say you don't know how you feel about it. So you got to come to grips with it and sort of embrace it, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I just don't know how the transition goes. Like if I just come home one day and this has happened, or if there's a discussion that you have as a family, like, we've been together a long time. And this is a new, we're going to start a new part of our life. And what do you mean by that? And, then the reveal happens.
Right. She has you read a book first just to get you.
It could be.
It's called this happens to everyone,
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, she's going, oh, one day he's going to have this really thin hair or have that old man smell or something.
Old man smell is a possibility. And I think the other thing that kind of hit me that might have been the real reason I was thinking this is I personally have an old mom haircut and I've had one, if you think about it, for pretty much the last 20 years. I have that.
I now that you say that,
mm-hmm.
I can see it.
I
can see it. Yeah.
It's right here.
Well, okay, so you had a couple of epiphanies then. You kind of at first it was thinking about your wife, and then it was like, oh, I'm already there. So
I basically look like I've walked into my barber for the last 20 years and said, can I have the small town lesbian?
Yeah.
Please. And that's just the look I've had for a long time.
Well, it serves you well. It works for you.
It does. It works for me.
And it's one of those things too where everything is inevitable. I was thinking about this the other day. Just when do you decide to lean into just from a fashion standpoint too? Like, I think I'm still kind of holding on to it. Like with I wear these jeans and these shoes, and I'm not going to wear the crisp white New Balances. I think you had mentioned that, and I'm like, at some point, I just got to switch over. Yeah. I'm wearing pleated khakis. I'm wearing white New Balances. Yeah. I'm wearing golf shirts. And I think I just described your wardrobe, actually.
You did. It's okay. Well, I've got a head start, except that, the last thing I'm holding back from is the crispy white New Balances. But I see how you get there, because there's times where I like comfort over appearance.
For sure.
And I'm actually a little bit backwards. And then I invested, I had about 8-9 year streak of wearing khakis all the time.
Oh, I think
until
we
I
all
found
did,
a decent pair of jeans. I thought I was classing it up a little bit.
It's weird. Yeah, that's one of the. How you never. I guess sometimes you can sort of see okay, the man bun. You sort of look at and go, that's going to be a sign of the times. It's going to last for a few years, and then, or at least we think that. Yeah. I think that, and then in 10 years, it's going to be, oh my gosh, that's so 2012 or 13 or whatever. But then there are other things that you look back on, and you're like, every dude is wearing pleated cap. Like if you look back in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, or even really starting in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw a picture of my friend's 16th birthday party, and our mutual friend Adam was there, and I'm there, and we're both wearing the exact essentially same thing. It's like the uniform. It was like khaki pants, like brown shoes, and a polo shirt, basically, but like a generic polo shirt. But anyway, so it happened. It happens to us all, and.
So I think we've hit on it, but what is the man version of one day you're going to wear? What's the man version? I think
a hat, maybe old guys wear hats, or at least they used to. Like, I'm talking about the what do you call those? A lot of guys,
fedora style hat.
Yeah, fedora, right? Or no, that's not what I'm thinking of. Anyway, whatever. I guess it's not that many people do it, but my granddad used to wear don't know, it's just one of those flat caps that you can kind of picture kind of coming from Scottish or whatever. And my granddad used to wear one of those. So I did have a phase, and again, we're going to get back to your question here, but it reminds me of when I had taken one of my granddad's hats from Kentucky. He had a bunch of those. And I was probably like in 10th grade, and I decided I was going to be like, that was going to be my thing.
Yeah.
And I think I wore it once and quickly decided that it wasn't going to be my thing. Too many comments about it, and then you take it off. It's like, you don't really need to have a thing. But that could be it. But I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
I think what it is the outfit that you described earlier, which was the golf shirt, the khaki pants, and the shoes. But you wear that outfit to cut the grass.
Yes.
I think that's the transition. It's not maybe a haircut, but it's like that outfit kind of is used for everything.
You don't see, that's a good point. You don't see older gentlemen out dressed in shorts or sweatpants doing that. They are wearing that same thing. Interesting. And it's also, I think you sweat less. When you get older, you kind of things start drying up a little bit.
Or that's where that old man smell comes from, because you think you sweat less.
Oh.
But you're actually just a stinky guy.
So, talking about old men got me thinking about, I was thinking today about my dad and my granddad.
Okay.
One of which is no longer with us and one of which is old. And they both had something in common, which is they constantly were pulling my leg.
Pulling your leg.
And, I was thinking about this. We've done, I think, just 3 leg idioms already, but shake a leg, break a leg, cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
But we haven't done pulling my leg, which I would say is right up there, maybe is just as big as that one.
Yeah. And it's also very dad, like when you say that, that's like something your dad says to you. Or you have a discussion with him and he goes, "Are you pulling my leg?"
Yeah, exactly. It's a very, something that feels like a familial sort of thing. Like, I don't say that. I wouldn't necessarily say that or even think about like a friend or anybody else. I think about just sort of a kind-hearted sort of, telling a story that's not really true.
But it's something that you don't do this with a stranger or somebody that you've just met at the bar. There is like a comfort level with it.
It's kind of like teasing a little bit, but it seems, I don't know, the connotation I have of it is a little bit friendly or nicer.
Yeah.
So, I think about my granddad did it all the time, and just little things where he would tell me a story or tell me something and then kind of just say, "I'm pulling your leg." And I go, "Oh, and it was always good." My dad takes it really far. Like, I will never forget this, where I really felt like I was going crazy. I wasn't sure if he was being honest or not.
Yeah.
And he told my sisters and I this long story about how he was out walking and he saw some people unloading gear and asked him to help. And next thing you know, he was helping Alison Krauss. Like, it was very specific, like the artist, get set up. And then he asked her on stage and then they were dancing. I mean, it was the most, and I'm just listening. At first you believe it. And then at a certain point, I'm looking at my sisters and everybody, I think Sandy was there. I'm like, "Dad, what? This did not happen." And he go, "Oh yeah." Do this whole thing. And there's still a seed of doubt in my mind to this day. I'm like pretty sure it didn't happen. So that's taking it a little far. But I get those, and my son does it to me now. So see, now I'm the dad. I feel like I kind of missed the, it like skipped a generation.
Right.
My dad did it to me. Now my son does it to me all the time. And it's much more immature stuff than that. But that was pretty immature by my dad. I love you, Dad. But
that was a good one.
But he had me. And then I think eventually I think he admitted it, but
or did he?
I don't think he did. I think I was getting a gaslit or something a little bit there. Yeah. But anyway, so what about you, Steve? Do you have anybody in your life that you think about?
I think you actually brought up an example that it was a little bit or your example made me think of something that was familiar. It was my grandfather who's also passed. And I remember one day he told me a story. We were driving the car and I was kind of sticking my head out the window. And he looked back in a very stern grandpa way, told me about how when he was younger, he saw someone stick their arm out the window and then it hit a tree and was torn off. And I promptly got back in the car and from that point forward did not put my arm out the window.
Yeah.
And in the same way that just very recently I realized that the band name Whitesnake was also a penis joke.
Right.
It hit me that I'm pretty sure my grandfather didn't see someone get their arm torn off.
Right.
But it got, he was pulling my leg.
Yep.
Or in this case, maybe yanking an arm.
Yep.
Or something like that, but to get something across. So he did kind of read me, kind of pull a joke on me. But at the same time, there's a good lesson with that.
Well, in adults, it's funny you say that. 'Cause speaking of legs, I now remember when you're a little kid, man, you'll believe anything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you will believe anything. I remember this guy at church. We were at this park, and people were on the, what do you call that thing? Not a merry-go-round. Is it a merry-go-round? No. What do you call that?
Seesaw?
Not the seesaw, but the thing where kids kind of sit on it and you spin it around in a circle. Whatever it's called, the thing where the kids all sit on it and then you like spin it around. I remember him saying, so this guy, he was like a youth pastor or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I was probably like 5. And he's like, don't get too close. I saw a guy get his leg cut off doing that. So very similar to your arm thing.
Yeah.
And it freaked me out. Because I'm picturing like the viscera and everything. I remember, of course, I was like, I have mama's boy. I'm like, Mom, he said I could have got my leg cut off. She probably had firm words with him too.
But now that you've said that out loud, at the same time, my grandfather was in World War II. He is an immigrant from Belgium. Youth pastor. I've seen the amount of Mountain Dew those guys put down. There's a chance that both those things have happened. That, maybe they weren't pulling on a leg and that's it. But maybe that kind of gets to a good joke, has a little bit of truth to it. Like a good lie.
and frankly, he probably just said something like, you'll get your leg. He said something. But either way, I think he was kind of pulling my leg there and it stuck, but you don't remember till like later in your life and you're like, wait, I believed that. The things that you believe, and I probably have a longer list if I thought to write that down. But so pulling my leg. So I was looking at these, okay, shake a leg, break a leg, cross an arm and a leg. Why haven't we done pulling my leg? And I said, well, maybe there's a reason. So I find this to be pretty funny. So maybe we get a little clue here when we start going down the usual suspects of our sources here. So let's start with phrase finder, and I'm going to read, quote, they start this by saying, quote, it would be nice to be able to say that I've discovered the origin of pulling your leg, which is one of the holy grails of etymology. Regretfully not.
Interesting.
We go over to Worldwide Words, Michael Quinion. He knows, right? And his quote is, oh dear, I wish we knew. Okay. Man. Word detective. Hello, old friend. It's good to see you again. And it's because somebody wrote in asking about pulling my leg. Right. And he's like, not you, Daniel, the guy's doing it, but this question, because it's the one that we don't know. I'm going to go to Today I Found Out, which we go to every once in a while, todayifoundout.com. And they start their article off this way. They say there are 2 popular theories about how this phrase came about, neither of which is backed up by any real evidence, nor are they that plausible. So, you can tell by the way that I've never seen one that's this, people seem to be this, I always want to say befuzzled, which isn't a word, that people are sort of at a loss like this. Right. I mean, normally it's, we're not sure, but this is what we think. This one, people really don't know, but I'll talk about what the 2 theories are.
Right. And I also like, too, how they're very, like, phrase finders, very emphatic about their no. It's a strong no.
Well, and that's what I like that's why I wanted to read these, because you sort of get a little bit of a flavor for each of the websites, because that's a very phrase finder, just like, no, we don't know, regretful. And then Michael Quinion, oh dear, I wish we knew. It's very Michael Quinion, right? So here's what Today I Found Out, and these other ones talk about these 2, the main 2 things that you hear. So the first and most popular is having to do with thieves pulling people's legs before they rob them. And nowhere that you find this are there any real details about or evidence about this. It just gets repeated over and over. It's like some of these that we get never, oh yeah, because they don't have anything. And so they'll say things like, and this is always when you know you're in trouble. So one of the red flags for me is when you hear, for example, in this one, the words medieval markets or Victorian London. It's just these large hundreds of years swaths where they say, back in medieval London or Victorian London.
Where we coincidentally didn't have a lot of documentation of what actually happened.
Right, well, because of the frickin' plague. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and then you find these places that say it originated in 1882 with confidence. Again, no reference, but it's like, that's even a bigger red flag.
Right.
Everybody's saying 1882. I mean, to get to the truth, you want to hear details being a little different, but close, because that tells you you're getting different accounts. If it's the same exact thing, that's a red flag. But at the same time, it's interesting because the first known reference to the phrase is in a book called Blackbirding, which kind of sounds like it could be an Australian phrase. You know how they put things down in shorter?
It could be. I think it's a Tyler Perry project that's been on the side for a while, too.
It's Tyler Perry and...
Australia.
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm. Or who knows, maybe Sir Paul McCartney's involved. But Blackbirding. And so it's by somebody called W.B. Churchward. Mm-hmm. And there's a character that says, quote, "Then I shall be able to pull the leg of that chap Mike. He is always trying to do me." So maybe Belle Biv DeVoe's involved as well, now that I think about it. And then again in the Newark Daily Advocate in 1883, there's a quote that says, "It is now the correct thing to say that a man who has been telling you preposterous lies has been, quote, pulling your leg." So between the Blackbirding and the New Daily Advocate, like, we definitely know that around that 1880 time, this was an established thing, or this guy said it.
Right.
So it seems like it was new at the time because of the way that he says, the correct thing to say is this. All right, so now let's go to the second one that we hear, which is the second theory about pulling your leg or pulling one's leg has to do with executions by suspension, hanging at Tyburn in England. So basically this goes back to people being hanged, and I guess they pay people. So like, I remember hearing about this with the whole headsman's axe thing. Like you tip the headsman to make sure that you get a clean blow. Yeah. And it's the same deal with this, where people were paid to hang on your legs to make the hanging go quicker. You want to die faster. That said, just absolutely no connection to that and tricking someone. It doesn't make sense, but it's so dark. These dark ones seem to be more popular.
Right, because it appeals to everyone's sense of the macabre and morbid. And I think also I had seen a theory of this too that mentioned the term hanger-on. Came from this, that we've talked about before, that if you want to identify bad folk etymology, it's always one that coincidentally solves 3 questions for you, provides you the answer in 3 different ones for the price of 1.
Exactly. Yeah. But you got to admit that there's a reason why the Aunt Peggy stuff stays around, because it's just a real quick thing you can tell somebody, next time you use pulling your leg, remember that had to do with this. But if you take 2 seconds to think about it, it doesn't really work. But it also goes back to the same thing with pulling people's legs to trip them up and rob them. Okay. I mean, I think the closest thing, the reason that one is maybe has something to do with it is that, I mean, you could think of it as like a con man or a con artist or somebody. Right. Doing something to trick you, pulling your leg, making you think you had tripped over, and then stealing your wallet or something. Yeah, you're pulling my leg.
But that seems a little, I've never heard. Not that I've studied pickpocket theory, but so often. But you don't travel to another country and get warned about the people that are going to trip you and then take your stuff. It's bumping into you and then somehow stealing your wallet. But maybe that's it. I wish was Donald Morris. We've discussed him, and one of the few people we'll identify full by name, a very, very prominent thief in the Virginia Beach area in the 90s. So I'm trying to think of things that he did. If he, when I think of expert thieves, I don't remember him ever using that either.
No, he never pulled any legs. He just looked at you right in your face and stole your stuff.
And told you it was your fault for leaving it out.
Yes, exactly. Take my fake Oakleys or whatever. Yeah. But so we actually, speaking of Virginia Beach, we witnessed some pulling, right?
So, not to give too much away about our background, but we were able, during our younger years, to see some faith healing live stunts take place, including one with a leg being lengthened after being told it was shorter than the other. which turns out to be a kind of parlor trick that magicians do. So the gist of it is that when you tell someone this, you position them in a way, have them sit down, and their legs look at different lengths. And then you start with them sitting sideways, with their legs slightly sideways, and then you maneuver the shoe a little bit.
Now that you say that, Steve, that's interesting. Yeah. Because I didn't see that come up at all as a potential origin of this, but I wonder how long that's been going on, and that almost fits in etymology better than, I mean, obviously Michael Quinion didn't say it, so it probably didn't happen, but
he didn't go to enough Pentecostal services as a child. But the thing that always got me about that was it seems like, it makes sense it's a parlor trick, and what's really the point? There's not a plague of...
That was the thing that didn't make any sense.
Disrupted legs, but it's a good way to kind of, I guess... establish some validity for what you're doing.
No, but right. I remember being there and being like, that's what you're going to heal?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then that person for the rest of the day was like, that he messed me up. I have a limp now. It was very dramatic.
Yeah.
So anyway, it is interesting and kind of tight. I mean, he was pulling,
he
literally pulling everyone's leg.
Yeah.
So there's one more potential, I guess, again, this doesn't explain where it came from, but there's one more place where this was written. I know I told you the first written instance was like in 1883, but there was a diary of James Gallatin in 1821, so about 60 years before, that says, Mr. Adams is not a man of great force or intelligence. Mr. Adams is not a great man of force or intelligence, but his own opinion of himself is immense. I really think father, in a covert way, pulls his leg. I know he thinks little of his talents and less of his manners. Well, so first, I like this one because he's talking about his father pulling this guy's leg. And we've talked before about how dads and there's an interaction there with getting your leg pulled by your dad. But, record scratch, this diary was not published until 1914 as the diary of James Gallatin. Yada, yada. His grandson wrote it, and it's come out that he probably made the whole thing up.
Yeah. And the other thing is I found out that Gallatin is actually pronounced peeps.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
In joke for one person in Australia.
Yeah. It's fine. I found it funny, so I did my laugh. But I will say that it reminds me of red herring. It was the same situation where I think the son wrote the thing saying this whole story about red herring, and it wasn't true. He was pulling legs too. But I like when there's some like symbiosis with these things. So we start to see trends where guys want to claim this is where this started. Usually it's a little English town. I usually get pumped up about that. But so I'm going to end this one by saying, we didn't really learn anything here. But we did tackle pulling your leg. And in conclusion, I'll end with Michael Quinion's quote: "The truth is out there, but it's keeping itself well hidden."
Yeah. But that being said, what I do like about this idiom is it's one that I think I like the familiarity with how you would use it. You wouldn't pull a leg with a stranger. It's something kind of intimate, unless you are a faith healer traveling through Virginia Beach.
Right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't touch someone's leg. It's kind of it's a nice one, I think. I think I'm going to try to use it a little bit more and keep that one alive.
Yeah, let's keep that one alive because it is not as popular, but it is one that just to say, I mean, it caught fire. I mean, this became one of the biggest, and every one of these places where I was reading about it, everyone said the same thing, which is like, no one knows exactly where it came from. Even the folk etymology is ludicrous, but everyone has heard this.
Yeah.
It's up there with Raining Cats and Dogs, and everyone's heard it. Yeah. I mean, people haven't heard a lot of these ones we do. But,
a lot of people didn't know that you could increase someone's leg size as a parlor trick.
Yeah.
In the church, so you got that going for you.
Well, we saw some things.
Yeah.
So
that could be a whole other podcast.
It really could. Hey, I'm Scott.
And I'm Erin.
And we're both kind of freaking the fuck out right now.
But you know what? It feels really good to talk it out.
Yeah, it's kind of like therapy, only with more laughs and less crying.
Our podcast is called Panic at the Costco.
Each week-ish, we're joined by friends and guests to discuss quarantine life, shopping misadventures, homeschooling, conspiracy theories, and adjusting to a new normal.
Visit speaksies.com/panic to subscribe to our YouTube channel and see us dressed in our finest sweats. You can also subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Don't forget to join the conversation on the Panic at the Costco Facebook page. And thanks for taking a listen.
To say when she's around, she steals the air from me, and it is difficult to breathe.
Species.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is tongue-in-cheek.
Tongue-in-cheek.
So I thought this one fit well because this is another one that is sort of like pull your leg, where it's kind of you're getting teased a little bit, somewhat good-naturedly, I'd say. For a long time when I was a kid, I thought this was tongue-and-cheek. I thought for the longest time it was tongue-and-cheek. I don't know when I figured out it was tongue-in-cheek, but I do remember having a college professor who would actually do that. Like, he kind of stick his tongue in his cheek and he kind of give you this look.
Yeah.
And he was an English professor.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought, does he just do that? Or is he trying, like, what's happening? Is he really trying to be tongue-in-cheek?
Maybe he's living his profession.
Yeah, I think it kind of was. And he's one of these guys that I really was, man, I looked at this guy like he's the smartest person in the world, you know. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. But it's how teachers kind of have that hold on to you. But I remember he did that. So tongue-in-cheek means, according to grammarists, saying something that's expressed ironically or facetiously. I generally think of it as, you know, if I use it all the time. I use it all the time. Normally because I'm trying to clarify something I've said.
Right.
I was being a little tongue-in-cheek there. I say it all the time. What about you? Do you say it? Did you grow up with this one?
I'm aware of it. I say a lot of stuff that is tongue-in-cheek. It's one I don't think I've used that much because I always just feel it doesn't flow well. And I think for me, it puts off an odd visual. Like if you literally do it like your professor did, it's just kind of weird. Like I could see you're getting across that you kind of making a sort of face, which is good to describe a face on a recording. Yeah. But it's something
that was a different face. I just
well, that could be a tongue in cheek in a different way, maybe. Right. Oh. Which is maybe the other reason why I haven't liked. Now I'm going to feel dirty saying it. You should. So I like ones that have a little bit of a double entendre, but in this one I've always just thought it. Yeah. So it's one that's not bad, and I say things very often tongue in cheek, but it's just a bit awkward.
It is a bit awkward. I don't know why it has become what I say a lot, but I do. But it was funny when you were making your faces and you're talking about this. So John Ito has a book called From the Horse's Mouth, where he says this phrase was originally meant to express contempt, which I can kind of see. Like if you try to just stick your tongue in your cheek and like stare at someone, I think you'd get the point of contempt across. You kind of, you can kind of see that. Honestly, more so than the other thing, which is using something ironically. So, it's so doing something tongue in cheek, though, the way I think we use it today is sort of in the same vein of like winking, saying something with a wink. And sometimes there's an actual wink there. Winks are kind of creepy, just like this is. Have you ever winked at somebody and then later you're like, why'd I do that?
Oh, yeah. I think every time I've winked. I've never winked and then said that was well timed.
It's weird. It comes out at the weirdest times, and it's like me winking at another dude to be like, "Hey, go along with this joke," and then I realize I give the very pronounced winks too. I'm like, the thing where you like
it's like a
bend your face around it and everything. So anyway, didn't mean to get into that, but the physical act of putting your tongue in your cheek is you're gonna look nuts. So where did this come from? Why do we say it? Well, Steve, you'll be happy to hear that this term first appeared in print in Sir Walter Scott's.
Yes. Not Sir Walter Raleigh.
Thank you. Okay. 1828, Fair Maid of Perth.
Perth, which is in on the western part of Australia.
Yeah, it's wild that this came from Perth. And it says, Sir Walter Scott says, or he writes, quote, "The fellow who gave this all hail thrust his tongue in his cheek to some scapegraces like himself." No clue what any of that means.
Yeah. But it sounds like something Sir Walter Scott, who is not Sir Walter Raleigh, would say.
Exactly. But scapegraces is a really cool word.
Yeah.
Makes me think of my friend Grace. I don't know. It was scapegrace, though. I don't know if that's good or bad. Yeah. But so it even, you know, of course, you and I have no idea what he's saying, but even in the at Grammarist where I was reading this, it says that it's not entirely clear if he was using it in like the literal term or as in the way that we use it now.
Yeah. And also, Scapegrace is a hardcore band located in Radford, Virginia, that never really got out of it. They were big in the early 90s, but
it's a Christian rock. It's a Christian hardcore band from Radford.
Yeah.
Scapegrace.
Yeah.
We don't need to Scapegrace. We got it.
Their first album, Pulling Your Leg.
Yeah. So there was another citation in 1845. About 15 years later, in the Inglesby Legends by Richard Barham. Okay, here's what this comes down to. The reason that this tongue-in-cheek thing is used the way it is really just you're trying to sort of hide your smiling. You know, it's a figurative way of, it's like saying biting your tongue.
Yeah.
And the best description I saw, it's the opposite of saying something with a straight face, right? Because saying something with a straight face is you're pulling someone's leg, but you're not letting on about it. Right.
Tongue in cheek, you're kind of showing your cards of that it is a joke.
And you're making an act of you want them to know, hey, I'm ribbing you, I'm pulling your leg. So, and that's why it comes back to being kind of a genial thing as instead of like really trying to lie to someone.
Well, and I'd say, even though you said genial, I think it's a little different though than pulling your leg. That pulling your leg to me is almost like a nice one. Yeah. I think things can be tongue-in-cheek. It's a little bit more sarcastic. It's a little bit more acidic or just kind of prickly with it. There's a little bit of a jab sometimes when you do something.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see. It's a little more of a. Either way, if you're one of my little sisters, it's annoying because I said it skipped a generation as far as my dad pulling my leg and my son now doing it to me, but I think it's because my sisters got the brunt of this. I teased them all the time. And, So that's it for tongue-in-cheek.
Tongue-in-cheek. Mm-hmm. So before we get to our last idiom, we're going to look at this week's new slang.
New slang when you notice the stride.
And this week, I get to bring the slang, and the term I have chosen is the word salty.
Yes, salty. My son says that now.
Yes. So I picked this up from my daughter, who, when I was cranky or crabby one night, asked why I was being so salty. So I don't think she used it correctly. So I will get in her face later and point out that really not the best way to use that word. But for today, it was enough. My wonderful daughter.
She ironically made you more salty.
She did, and it worked. And maybe she was pulling my leg and trying to make me act that way. So salty is a slang term that means upset or bitter. I'm getting that definition from the website knowyourmeme.com. So just like the New York Post, you know it's good when it comes from knowyourmeme.com.
You got to have Know Your Meme in your life, though. It is helpful. Actually.
But to give it a little bit more depth, this was mentioned in a 2015 article by Ben Zimmer, one of our word friends, at the Wall Street Journal, in an article, A Salty Word with a Promising Future. In 2015, the American Dialect Society picked this word as most likely to succeed. So even though this segment is called New Slang, this word has been around for a while, as Mr. Ben Zimmer tells us, that it was used the same way, but for a long time by the black community. So he quotes that African American newspapers in the 1930s documented the emergence of this twist, of this word being used as salty being something that you were a little bit angry, upset about. And this is backed up by knowyourmeme.com, which cites the online etymology dictionary, saying that this meaning angry or irritated was first used in 1938. So where is it used now? How did it come back into prominence if it was around in 1938? So I have, based on my research, which has also made me stupider, I have two ideas of why this has been promoted and come back up. So first, I think there were two things. One was a song by a rapper by the name of Chief Keef called Salty, from a 2013 album called Almighty So.
Chief Keef has had a lot of influence, like, on our children. Because he's also the guy that had a lot to do with no capping. So, So Chief Keef wouldn't have guessed it. But
Chief Keef isn't endearing himself to me that much. So from there, I think that was one thing that popularized it. I think another thing was its use in video games, in video game culture. So as you're aware of having a son of a tween/teen, that he plays a lot of video games online, live with other people. There's a lot of sass talking going on.
Can I give a quick impression of my son playing Fortnite?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, I'm gonna step away from the mic. Hold on. This is what I'll wake up to on like a Saturday. Yo, bro. Yo, on me. Bro, no. Oh, come here. I need help. Bro, you're so salty. So that's where I've heard it, and I guess it is.
Well,
it is.
I'm very sorry for everybody, and I blame Chief Keef, or I've said his name backwards every time. I don't care. So. Salty is something, as you gave by your demonstration there, of like when things don't go well and you kind of call people out, or you angry bro, you mad bro, that sort of thing. Yeah, as I mentioned, we're all dumber now for that. So that all being said, I'm actually going to say I like salty. Oh my gosh. And the only reason I'm going to say that is my kid uses it. She's awesome. And she's never followed it up by saying bro or Chief Keef. So I'll give thumbs up to Salty for that.
All right. Well, no disrespect to your daughter, but I hate this word. I hate it. For one is, we do not need this word. Mm-hmm. There's angry, there's irritable. This is just a lazy new term that I just hate. So the only time I'm ever okay with you saying salty, if you're not talking about what you're eating, is if you're talking about Salty the Songbook with a P. Because that's good memories. You remember Salty?
What the hell is... I have no idea what that is.
You don't remember Salty? So,
Please tell me about this thing that I've missed.
I'm surprised you missed Salty the Songbook, but he is just what he sounds like. A huge songbook. Think Barney, but a book of songs. And... it was something that was around the same time that there was legs being pulled and re-straightened out. And it's atrocious. But if you look, but it's also kind of nostalgic. So look up Salty the Songbook. Mm-hmm. So my recommendation is like all the thumbs down for using salty in a sentence, unless you're a cute kid. But really, I don't like my kids being. I don't like the whole thing where you come like to be serious. Mm-hmm. I don't like these words that it doesn't add anything.
Right.
It doesn't. It's just a dumb way to say irritated. Yeah. I mean, if you don't want to say irritated, there's a bunch of other ones you can choose from that aren't salty. And I know I sound like an old man, and this whole new slang thing was going to eventually do this.
Yeah, but it's starting already. You're getting salty about salty.
Did I say I like no cap? No, I hate no cap also. But either way, I like some of them, but I don't like this one.
But this one makes me want to say, you mad, bro?
Ugh, that's bad too.
These are bad for everybody.
We got to find some new ones that aren't as atrocious as these.
Next week we'll do new slang.
All right, new slang. Moving on. That was our new slang. Thank you, Steve. Yep. The last one is take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Which is something I'm trying to do with that last new slang.
Which, by the way, we did not coordinate these. It just happened.
Well, and I think Steve got confused because tonight I was like, hey, man, that's awesome. You picked one that goes along with the theme. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, salty, grain of salt. So it was not planned, but it's a good way to end this show. So this is another one that when I was a kid, it just wasn't intuitive to me. I didn't understand. And we're not doing this one tonight. It's kind of like chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I think I know what you're getting at, but I don't know why. But then you sort of just don't care and you just use it. So take with a grain of salt's one of those for me. And I guess, to me, it's just having a little bit of skepticism when you hear somebody say something. I kind of think of it like consider the source a little bit, like take it with a grain of salt. But it also sort of means believe what I'm saying, or I believe you, Like, I think you're not trying to pull my leg here, but I have to take it with a grain of salt because I'm a little skeptical. So, Steve, what about you? Take it with a grain of salt when you use. What does that mean for you?
So it's one that I've realized now, as you brought up, that I use frequently. I feel like I say it all the time. I really don't know why I would say that.
Right.
But it's something that, like, you accept you tell someone, take this, but, consider the source. Don't entirely take what I have to say for truth on that. But I don't know why. I don't know why you would say take it with a grain of salt. But I say it all the time. It's one of those ones that seems to be understood if you're an English speaker. You know exactly what someone means when they say that. But when you look at it and think about it, I don't know why.
Well, and frankly, one thing that's weird about it, if you think about it, so the British version that gets used a lot more is take it with a pinch of salt. Now, that one at least makes a little more sense, because if the whole conceit here is it's something you kind of don't want to eat, and so it's like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, sort of thing. Then you need a spoonful of sugar, not a grain of sugar.
Right.
It doesn't. A grain of salt, it feels like a weird hyperbolic sort of in the opposite way to say it. But
maybe the Americans made it better. Like Britain, you're not that efficient. We're America. We don't need a whole pinch.
Well, actually, so
in your face, King George.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
USA. All right. So I went ahead and just, I was looking at etymology of grain of salt, and I was just finding things that weren't really helping out too much. It was more like, this one's got this little thing here, but it wasn't giving me a full story. And I said, let me try pinch of salt. Sure enough, boom, Michael Quinion came up and to my rescue. So worldwide words. This expression has been around in the English language since at least the 17th century. And it comes from a misunderstanding of a comment in a Latin document nearly 2,000 years old. So I'm glad we're ending on this one, because we've had so many in this episode that I just have to say, we don't really know exactly where it came from. This one, we know where it came from. Around 77 AD, your boy, which we're probably mispronouncing, Pliny the Elder.
Pronounced Peeps.
Probably pronounced Peeps, or I don't know, Viscount.
Viscount, yeah.
He wrote in his natural history that the Roman general Pompey discovered something when he conquered Pontus, which was a country on the Black Sea. So while Pompey was searching the private apartments of this king Mithridates, he found that I guess he found some notes or something that showed how this king had built up his famous immunity to poisoning. Okay, so the story is, and who knows, right? If this is, you have to take this with a grain of salt, literally. Is that the story is that Mithridates was immune to poison, and so Pliny the Elder says that the way he built up his immunity was that he'd fast, so he'd do a little, IF, but without the I. And then he'd take small doses of poisons, but then with that, he would take it with a grain of salt. Addito salis grano in Latin. So Pliny the Elder, when he wrote that, he just meant this as a simple report. He was just writing the story. But later on, readers started thinking that he meant that people shouldn't believe this story.
Right.
About this king who was a notorious enemy of Rome. So they took that connotation. He was literally, scholars believe, just reporting, hey, this is what this guy found.
Right.
Sounds like his guy was kind of vaccinating himself, by the way.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't listened to The History of Vaccination by Robert Bankett, plug alert, go listen to it. And so modern scholars do say that there's really no evidence of Latin literature back in the day using grain of salt as a figurative expression. So this is one that it came from Pliny the Elder, but because, there were only so many people you could read, right? Pliny, that there is a reason why he gets referenced a lot. Over time, it took on the connotation of, well, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And that's kind of, when you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense for how we use it now.
Yeah.
But
it did help the dread pirate Roberts learn how to build up an immunity to poison. So when he confronted the Sicilian in The Princess Bride. So I think, Pliny the Elder again strikes.
Yes.
Keeping a great movie. from collapsing.
Absolutely.
In the center.
And speaking of collapsing, I think it's time to wrap up this episode.
So as we get towards the end of this, I've enjoyed seeing different ways to kind of rib people, pulling your leg, saying something tongue in cheek, but at the same time taking things with a grain of salt, making sure you don't take things for the truth. Like if someone says that I'm a man, I've had an old mother's haircut my whole life. Generally, someone that says that would be pulling your leg, but I'm not being tongue in cheek. And don't let this make you salty, especially.
Now I'm salty for real.
When my wife eventually gets that haircut that I already have. This is Steve from Origin of Species. Thank you very much for listening to our show today. If you enjoy Origin of Species, you'll definitely enjoy our new podcast, Panic at the Costco. In each episode of Panic at the Costco, Scott and his friend Aaron join special guests to discuss the new realities of life during quarantine. Homeschooling, wearing pajamas all day, and most importantly, the best way to hoard toilet paper. In addition, Panic at the Costco is the first video podcast from Species. You can watch and listen as Scott, Aaron, and their guests discuss weathering the apocalypse while wearing sweatpants. Subscribe to Panic at the Costco today on YouTube, or if you prefer audio, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify by going to Speaksies.com/panic. That's Speaksies.com/panic. Panic at the Costco, the newest podcast from Species. Thank you again for listening to Origin of Species, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Can I have the small town lesbian?
Yeah.
Please.